All right, this video is going to demonstrate how to create a circular loom for weaving. Like this one, similar to this, we have a regular circular loom, but we also have one floating in the center. So I'm going to show you how to get that set up. I have already set up my big loom. This is a 12-inch hoop. And what I have done is I have wrapped around the hoop with jute. So all I did, here's a smaller example. It's just a metal hoop that I've done, and I have simply just woven this around or wound it around until the whole thing is covered, nice and tight and covered. And you can use a piece of tape. You could put a piece of tape and get that to stay and just wrap it around. So I have a big hoop, and then I've also done a small hoop. Another thing that you're going to need is just your regular cotton warp, and I have already measured this out. Basically you take and you wrap it around however many times you're going to have, and it's usually about 15. I usually do a couple more just to make sure that it's all set and ready. So the next step is going to be getting this secure and kind of where we want it placed. That's kind of a tricky part. I'm also going to use some cotton warp for that, but not off of my other spool. So I'm just going to cut a couple pieces of cotton warp that are a little bit bigger than my hoop for getting that placed, and then I'm going to cut those in half. Now I'm going to put one of these on for each direction. So I'm going to do a south, north, west, and east, and I'm simply just going to tie it, double knot it. All right, so that's going to be my south one. Okay, so I have strings on here kind of going in the 4 directions. And what I need to do now is figure out where I want my circle to be. It can be in the middle, it can be off to the side. And what I like to do is mark on my string just to give me an idea. But every single time I do this, it never ends up where I think it's gonna be, because you pull tight with the string. So I can just put a little dot here, kind of helping me place where I want to tie my knots. All right, and it doesn't matter which one you start off with. You just need to start by tying a knot. And I try to have the knot where my mark is. I think I lost my mark. And again, I'm gonna double knot it because I'm gonna have to pull this tight. So now I'm gonna do the one going in the opposite direction, and I'm gonna pull tight. I'm gonna try not to pull so hard that make it so tight that my hoop starts to warp. Because if this is just a thin metal hoop, that it actually will kind of move a little bit. Okay, and I gotta get this one tight as well, so I'm gonna try to keep it tight as I'm doing this. All right, so now I can put my other 2 on, just like I did those. It's okay if they start going a little bit crooked as you try to get it placed. All right. So these eventually are going to be cut off. They're just really simply holding our piece in the spot we need it to be in. So now we can do our warp. So now I'm going to bring back my warp thread, and I like to tie it. I usually start in the middle of one of my sections just to kind of get it steady and going. I don't want to start by one of those strings that's going to be cut off. I'm going to double knot this just to get it onto my hoop. I'm going to have a little bit of a tail so I can tie my last hoop to this, or my last warp, whenever it's going to go all the way around and come back here and join with this one in the end. All right, so this is similar to warping all the way across, except now we have a circle in the center, and that's what we're going to be going through. I'm not going to go all the way across like a normal circular warp. So I'm going to go under and through my center, and then under and over. All right, you're gonna notice that it's gonna move a little bit as we're putting our warp on. That's okay, we want our warp to be tight. Okay, so again, I'm going under and through the center. Now my center warps are gonna be a little bit closer than my outside warps. And you can adjust. I usually have my outside warps about 1 inch apart. All right, and then I'm gonna go under and around. So I'm always going under my hoop and through it in the center. Getting it placed, kind of tricky. And then I'm gonna go under and around my hoop on the outside. So always remember under and around. So under and around. I'm gonna kind of adjust and get it tight again, because every single time I do this, it kind of loosens up a little bit with the warp. And again, try not to pull so hard with your warp that you're distorting the shape of your hoop. Unless you want it distorted. If you want an oval hoop, I guess, then you can pull it really tight. Now I'm starting to notice that my threads over here are really getting a little bit further apart than my desired distance. So I'm gonna slide them over and then kind of tighten it back up just by pulling on my warp and continuing on. Some of my warp is coming off of my shuttle, and that's okay. All right, so I have come to an impasse. I'm right here at my first string that I put on just to keep my center hoop, my floating hoop, in its spot. Ooh, I need to adjust that a little bit. So now that that's in the way, I need to cut it off. But this one is really kind of loosey-goosey, and it's not even doing its job anymore. So it's okay that we cut it off. If you notice, the other 3 are still pretty tight. Those still need to be there, but whenever I get closer to them, they'll have to be cut off. All right, and I'm gonna continue on after I cut off that. So I'm gonna do this all the way around my entire hoop. Okay, so I'm almost done with putting my warp on. Again, I'm just going under through my center hoop, like making sure my spacing is good, and then under and around my big hoop. All right, so this is gonna be my last one, and it's gonna meet up with my first one here. All right, so I'm gonna kind of pull it tight. Notice how my warp is nice and tight. There's no loose spots. Like this is in there real good. It's not gonna go anywhere. And then I'm gonna tie this off, keeping it tight. So I'm kind of pulling on it to keep it tight, and I'm gonna double knot it. And then I can cut my warp thread. So this is the finished thing. Now I do have these little things that are kind of just camping out, and as I start weaving, I can kind of push those in, or I could tie it in the back. So I'm not really concerned about those just hanging out. And now I can start weaving.